Todd is not only a remarkable, successful 30-year titan in business with having multiple businesses that generate multiplied millions of dollars.
And if that plan happens to be to build $1 million company, which I can help you do.
But he's humble. He's a man of God. He's a family man. The world's news organizations are built on everything but positivity.
He is an influential entrepreneur and business speaker for over 30 years.
I've got to forecast. I've got to pronounce. I've got to project. I've got to share with you my ideas, my vision, and my goals for not only myself, but for you.
That's why he came up with his incredible concept of taking and creating a platform for people that are wired differently.
And you got to understand that your habits of your person and your habits of your business and your habits of your spirituality have to lead to the North Star of who you are. We need to figure out who we want to be in life. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. We did it. We did it. The Sebastian Gorka. My friend from Salem Media, my friend from Battleground. I've traveled as many as 10 different states. We're going to be doing as many as 12 different functions together over time. And I just got to tell you what a privilege it is. I consider him a friend, to be on a show, to take time from his life to come out here and do this. And one of the first things he said in this morning is he's back in the green room staring at me right now. You got to understand that is one intimidating figure. He says, "You are insane. This is cruel punishment," right? It's early in the morning, but we do it early, and maybe we can move some things around, but the replays work. And everybody, God bless you. Thank you for what we're doing here. I'm going to bring Sebastian Gorka on any second now, and we're going to talk about his personal life. We're going to talk about his political life, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Israel and the spiritual life, and we're going to get some really, really good things from this man. He is amazing, and he's doing a special favor for me, taking out a time of his sleep time to be with me. So without further ado, my good friend Sebastian Gorka. Good, you look spectacular. You look this good every morning.
I didn't say what you did was bad. I actually said it was evil. Okay, I'm a night.
What did I say?
I'm a night owl. Okay, who watches podcasts at 7:30 in the morning? If it wasn't you, I would not be here. So thank you, my friend. Thank you also for your support of the Battleground tour that you made possible. But most of all, I don't think I should thank you for this because I'm on a diet. Thank you for the massive box of donuts you shipped to my studio for my team. If you haven't tried Todd's donuts, you're missing out. But don't do it regularly because they're rather delicious.
You know, I forgot I did that. We did. You asked me on your show. What a cool thing that was. And we did the show. We had a lot of fun there. But I think it was all hinged around, obviously, the Battleground tour, and we did it with Salem Media. I think 2019 you did Salem Media. Is that when that started? 2019?
It'll be my 5th year in January.
America
so it's been a while. Yeah.
America First. Yeah, it's just an amazing show. I love watching. I love being a part of it. But yeah, so we did the Battleground tour. Let's just kind of start off with that. That's how we met. We met on the Battleground tour. We did, I think, 9 cities. And I believe you and Dennis Prager were really the only, you hit every stop. Maybe Gallagher. Did Gallagher hit every stop? I mean,
no. I left you guys in Philly. So I did the first half, and then you picked up somebody else. I think you did all of them. Gallagher might have done all of them, but I had to get back to the studio. But it was pretty intense, and it was made possible through you. So we're very grateful to you.
Yeah, it was a good time. So, anyways, we're getting back together in Tampa, November 13th, and I'm not sure what they call it, the Battleground Reunites or something, Saving America. We're going to do that. We are obviously on a plan to save America. Sebastian's got a lot of different layers to him, and I thought this half hour or so that we were going to be able to talk with Sebastian about what makes him special, what he feels about America. And one of the things I learned about you that I didn't learn from the first time that we met, I don't know if you remember the first time that we met, but I have some pictures here of us. And this is the ads I've been running for. Yeah, I didn't realize you're that much taller than me. I actually asked my people, I said, listen, could you find a picture that he's not that much taller than me? And they like, Todd, get over it. Anyway, so this is us on the jet plane flying all over the country. You remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't get to do that a lot, but when I hang out with people like you, it happens, and that was a lot of fun.
That was so fun. I think that was probably the highlight of a lot of things. This is you and Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher. And that's one of the first times I saw you, and I thought, man, I can't wait to meet these guys. It was a good time. Now, do you remember this situation right here? Do you remember what we were arguing about?
I don't. What I remember most is when we were in the car park in that exotic location having a cigar. Do you have those photographs?
I do, but just so you know, everybody, we were not arguing here.
Don't break the illusion.
Yeah, don't break. Yeah, I think you won. It's okay. Here is there. Oh, there's Spitty. There's everybody.
I don't even have that photograph. That's so cool. You need to send me that.
I will send you that one, and then you probably want this one.
Looking good, dude. Looking good.
or this one. I have that cigar shot. I just don't have it on this roll. But I'll send that one to you too. So it's on I think it's on the cover of our pro. So listen, let's get down to you. So here's what I do. I only do personal interviews. I do this show every morning at 7:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. I'm up at 4 o'clock. I start to prep for the business show, the Christian side of what we're doing. We grow people spiritually, profitably, and personally. And that's the goal, to triangulate those things to be America's functional coach. And I want to thank you for the battleground. I want to thank you for what you said every time we ended. You called me out in front of everybody, and you thanked me personally, and you didn't have to do that. So I want you to know, and you did introduce me as America's coach, even at Harley Davidson. So thank you for that. So I remember that event. So here's what I want to do is, listen, here I'm going to put you on the spot. Sebastian, why are you wired differently?
That's not a question for me to answer. I mean, it's a question for you to answer. You are the wired differently guru, and it's like asking people, why are you so good at something? It's like, I don't want to talk about that. If you want to talk about that, you can, give me your take on it. The obvious answer would be, I guess, a couple of things. Number one, my family background, and I know we're going to talk about that. And the other one is, there's this phrase, I think it was a popular book 10, 20 years ago, third culture kids. I'm not an American born in America. I chose America. I'm a legal immigrant to the United States. I grew up in another country, in the UK, and then my parents were from Hungary. So there's this influence, there's this mixture of various cultural inputs. So if you're looking for an obvious answer, Todd, I'd say the multiple cultural influences, and then of course, the backstory. When it comes to what I do and why I believe what I believe, that's really a function of who my parents were.
Yeah. So I did a show yesterday about you, and the entire show was built around this word authentic. And so this whole week, and I just want to give you a build up here, is this whole week has been It's Our Culture. So I've been teaching people on Wired Differently culture, spiritual culture, how I believe our culture is as followers of Christ, and the things that we're doing in our business and our personal life, and even in our political life. It's our culture. And I closed yesterday with you as basically the poster child of being authentic. I think that there is something about you that's scary, something that's about you that's a little bit intimidating at times, but there's this thing about you that's irresistible, right? And it's this irresistible trait that we now pretty much understand, is that the allure of a Sebastian Gorka is his authenticity. I love the fact that you're who you are. You're always who you are. You don't back down. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to say. And that is the sexy piece of Sebastian Gorka. And that's what I think is.
Yeah, it's an interesting that you choose that word. So, I have a daily radio show. I've only been doing it for about 4.5 years now. I've loved radio since I was a kid. I used to listen to talk radio, on a little transistor under my pillow as a kid in London. And as I never thought the idea that somebody would offer me a national radio show blows my mind even now. But as you get into the business and you talk to greats, you listen to what Rush did, and you get to know, you become buddies with the Mark Levins, the Dennis Pragers. The word they use again and again and again is exactly that word that you identified. It's authenticity. You can't You can't fake the passion. If you try and fake the passion for the issue or for what you're talking about, whether it's the nation, whether it's the founding principles, you don't need a PhD on the other end of the speaker. People can sniff out when you're faking it in a millisecond. And having to talk 3 hours a day, when you fake it, people know you're faking it. And I think it's an important word to focus on, maybe a foundational word for understanding the whole wired differently concept, because we're living in an age where I think this is the recrudescence, the rebirth of authenticity. Look at 2016. How does 2016 happen? I mean, I love reminding my fellow Americans who are born here, who have lost a sense of history. In 2016, 64 million Americans did something that's never happened in the history of the Republic, because from 1776 all the way through to Obama, the leaders of this nation were all connected, whether they're Republicans, whether they're Democrats, doesn't matter. From Washington to Obama, every single president was a member of the political elite. They were all former governors, senators, congressmen, or retired generals. Every single one of them was part of the quote-unquote swamp. And then what happens in 2016? A guy who's not a politician, a guy who has a reality TV show, a guy who works in business, like you, comes, runs the first time and wins the first time. Now, why do the American people, jettison 240 years of history and say, we want that guy who's not part of the elite. We want him to be the president. And I think it's because of that word you mentioned, because they looked at him and they say, wow, he may not be a politician, but he's authentic. I believe he loves America. He wants to save this country. So, yeah, I think I'm not going to put word. You're the guy who wrote the book. You're the guy that has the brand for the being America's coach. I think wired differently. Part of that, at least half of that, has to be, you got to be you. You got to be authentic.
Yeah, and I think that's what attracts, I think, most that people don't even know. That's why we're on Trump now, and I got a whole section with him. But I think that's what attracts people to Trump, and they don't even know why they're attracted to him. And it's this allure. There's a SPAN index it measures positive and negative emotions, and something came out the other day. I was reading that the actual attraction of love versus authenticity is 4,000 to 1, meaning that people are actually more attracted to authenticity by 4,000 times than even love. So when you think about a guy like Trump, or we think about you, because I want to focus on you, because I got to tell you, you are an amazing communicator. And it's not just your words that are doing it for me, brother. It's the actual side of your authenticity. So I just want to commend you on that and just give you some love in that regard. So here's what I want to talk to you about is, so a lot of people know that Sebastian Gorka is a citizen in 3 different nationalities, correct?
Correct.
And why don't we just tell me a little bit, because I had that darn picture of us smoking cigars in the tunnel. I think I could actually find it if I really looked hard here. Let's see here. Give me 2 seconds. I will find that bad boy, because I am money under pressure. I want to tell you this. That's why. Look at this. Is that what we're looking for?
That is the Exotic Cigar Club, otherwise known as the parking lot outside the hotel.
That was our first encounter with each other, and I'm like, oh man, I got to smoke a cigar with Sebastian. And I think I don't even know if we had a lighter, we had matches or something of that nature, and we're lighting up underground. And
I think we had to borrow matches from one of the workers in the hotel.
We had to borrow matches, and we slid under, and some other guys came with it. And I got to tell you, I was a little nervous. I hadn't met you, and I didn't really know you were going to be, like, you say you're 6'3", but you got to be 6'4".
Are you on tiptoes? Are you on tiptoes in that photograph? I need to know. Are you cheating?
Let me see. No.
Okay.
You got me by clearly 3 inches. But I want you to notice the definition of my body, though. I mean, come on, give me some credit.
Yeah, where is it?
Oh, Okay, so back to the show. He's waking up everybody.
Is this about you, or is this about your guest?
This is all about you. Trust me. So here's the deal. So we light these cigars up and we start talking about this and that. And one of the things I want to compliment you again on is that you are super interested, like even more so in the donut capital of the world, right? And so we talked about my father.
It's just such an amazing story. Your father's story is crazy, and I hope you talk about it a lot on the show.
Yeah, I do. But here's what I want to talk about, because then you shared me the story about your father. And I got to tell you, I take that with me. I take it with me. It's with me. And I hear the story about the train and the whole thing. Could you just give us this enlightenment of Hungary and Great Britain and how you're in America, and just give us you're born in 1970. Lot going on in the 70s. We're dealing with Vietnam over here, and you got the Russian thing going on earlier in your life, and your parents. I'm not going to give us a little bit about that inspiration, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke about it on my radio show this week. I do it maybe once a year when events make it more relevant. And again, it just so resonated. Callers, called in and spoke about how important that story is for understanding where we are today as a nation and a civilization. So my father was born in 1930. He was a teenager in World War II. He saw his nation utterly devastated by the war. And he believed at the end of the war that when the big guys, Stalin and Churchill had their peace meeting in Yalta, when they said the countries of Central Europe, like Hungary, would be allowed to choose their own governments, would be allowed to be democracies again, he believed them. And then what happened? 3 years later, the communists took over Hungary. It became, a satellite of the Warsaw Pact, a slave nation of the Soviet Union. And my father said, this is wrong. This is not what Churchill and Stalin promised us. So in college, he created a secret Christian students organization to spy on the Soviets and send that information out to the West to say, hey guys, you promised us democracy. These people have occupied our country. They're stealing the country. This is what they are doing. And they managed to establish connections with MI6, with British intelligence. But the bad news is this group of patriots, their reports to the West about what the Russians were doing eventually landed on the desk of somebody called Kim Philby. And if your listeners aren't aware of who Kim Philby is, there was a group called the Cambridge Apostles. These are the worst double agents in the Cold War. These are people who are ensconced in British intelligence, in the British government, but they were actually working for the Russians, working for the KGB. And Kim Philby ran my father's group for about 8 months until he could identify every single one of them. And then he blew their cover to Moscow, to the KGB, and the KGB told the Hungarian secret police. And so my dad, the classic, 2 a.m. knock on the door. He was arrested at the age of 20. He was put through a show trial and then given a life sentence by the communists. He spent 2 years in solitary, 2 years, 2 years down a prison coal mine. And then eventually in 1956, he was liberated during the very brief freedom fight of 1956 in Hungary, when a revolutionary captured a Russian tank and used it to liberate the political prisoners in the prison where my father was being held captive. He had to flee to the West because he was on a shoot to kill list. But when he was still in prison, an older gentleman whose crime that got him in prison was being a leader of the YMCA, this older gentleman, George, said to my dad, hey, if you ever get out of here, will you please take my daughters to the West? Will you take them to freedom? And my dad, who was convinced he was going to die in prison, said, yeah, sure, whatever, George. And there he is, a couple of years later, a free man, realizing he's on a shoot to kill list. He looks George up in the phone book. Remember phone books?
Yeah.
Finds his address, walks across Budapest on a cold November night, and knocks on George's door and says, okay, I'm here. I'm leaving now because they're going to kill me. Where are your daughters? And so with a 15-year-old girl, a 17-year-old girl, they started making their way to the Austrian border, to freedom. The 15-year-old had to turn back. She suffered from polio. She made it out later the next year. And then literally underneath a train carriage, Paul and Susan made it to the border, gave their last penny to a local farmer who showed them the route through the minefield. They tripped a trip flare as they were crossing, and before they could be machine gunned down, they made it into Austria. They were interrogated in a refugee camp for 6 weeks, and then they were asked, where do you want to go? A handful of countries are taking refugees from the revolution, Australia, Canada, America, and the UK. My dad back then, it took like another 30 years to find out. He didn't know he'd been betrayed from inside MI6 from the UK. So he said, let's go to England. So that's how a 17-year-old girl, a 26-year-old man arrived as with nothing, literally nothing in their pockets to the UK. She went to college. He finished his studies. They got married. And those are my parents. And that's how I ended up being born in the UK to Hungarian parents, where, you know, my first I learned English in kindergarten because my first language at home was Hungarian.
Yeah, that story is just remarkable. And what resonates with me is hanging underneath a train. Both of these young kids are just trying to find freedom. And, you know, we think about what we're going through now in our lives and how really significant is it when you think about people, forerunners to America, not as early as 1950s and 60s. I mean, we know people that are, you know, still alive back in these days, and there are still Holocaust survivors. If you think about the radical nature of what people have been through to create this country to secure and safe, and it just is this never-ending pursuit of I guess peace or safety in some regards. And so that story, and I didn't remember that Susan, your mother, was actually under the train. It's just daunting to me. So I love that story. So you get here, and the other piece I wasn't aware of as I did my research on you was that you ended up getting not only your PhD, but prior to that, you got your BA degree in what, philosophy and theology?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in London. My first degree was from London University in philosophy and theology.
Yeah, that's great. I love that background. So I want to kind of quickly move into the Trump era. And I think that everybody knows who Donald J. Trump is, the 45th president of the United States, probably the greatest president we've ever had. And people want to punch you in the nose if you say that, or they'll say, yeah, I agree. There's no in between. And so I want you to understand that he is and was the greatest president we ever had. He did things that no other president ever did. And part of the reason he was that and will be that again is because he is authentic. And we went back that to you listeners earlier today. And I know some of you are saying, Todd, you know, why are you getting so political today? Well, because life is political, right? You don't have people hanging under trains and fighting for their lives and being put in solitary confinement and living in coal mines for 2 years if it's not a political agenda of some sort of repression or oppression, right? And so this is the world we live in, and we're not going to leave it until someday we do ascend into heaven, right? And so these are the things that we're working on, we're living through, and we got great people like Sebastian Gorka telling us the past so we can understand how to move through the future. So you get this theology degree, you get this philosophy degree, you move through, you become a citizen in Hungary, you become a citizen in Great Britain, and in 2012, I believe you become a citizen in America. We're so grateful to be able to have that. And I think, do you know 4 languages? How many languages do you know?
English, Hungarian, French, German, and a little bit of Polish.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so you go into Trump's. So here's the segue to Trump is like, so I was in this spot, and we're flying all over the country, and I was sitting with you on that jet. And I remember this is one time I really knew I stepped in it because I was like in this process of can Trump win again? Can Trump, is he the right guy? We were kind of moving around, and we were trying to think about this. And there was, I think DeSantis was mulling around, and some other people were mulling around, and I thought I would ask this political question to you on the plane, and it was like, hey, who do you think you're going to support in this next presidency? And you looked at me, man, and I will never forget this. And you said, there is only one president in this United States, and that's Donald J. Trump. And I was on notice. I mean, like, you were clear cut as early as back then. It's like this, there's just no way this is going to shake out. I worked for the president. I know him as a human being. And so I just wanted to hear a little bit about your insight on the authentic Donald Trump, the guy you got to work with. You call him your boss. You were assistant deputy? What was that exact title you were for him?
Deputy Assistant to the President for Strategy. I was his strategist.
Can you share for these listeners some of the personal side of Donald Trump, some of the personal, you have such an affinity. You told the story about how he took time for you. He wrote you a letter, gave you a certificate in front of people. He is a real dude, right?
Yeah, I mean, wherever I go, wherever I give speeches, whoever the audience is, sooner or later, this is the question that always crops up. They always want to know what's he really like. So, first thing, let me just address what you just said about being political. I'm sure your listeners know this, but let me give them a little tool for when they're interacting with other people who say, "Oh, I'm not political," or "I don't want to talk about that."
Right.
You grab them by the shoulders and you shake them, right? Like a ketchup bottle. You shake them. Why? Because you have to get it clear in their minds. You don't have a choice but to be political. When they're putting masks on your children, when they're saying you have to get vaccinated or you get fired, guess what? Everything's political. You can't live your life in an apolitical bubble where you're separated from politics. Why? Because the people who want to take your freedoms away from you have made everything political. When your child can't go to school because of some decision made by some bureaucrat, then guess what? Your life is political. So this idea that you can be neutral is just garbage. Wake up and choose a side, and I think you know which side I'm on. When it comes to President Trump, look, there's so much to discuss here. And I've written 3 books, 2 of them after I left the White House. If you want to know about him in detail, the second book is Why We Fight, and the third book is The War on America's Soul. So check those out. Let me just give you one example. There's so many examples I could give of who this man is. So people aren't aware about the background to recognizing Jerusalem and moving our embassy. It was, in fact, 23 years beforehand that an American president had promised that. His name was Bill Clinton. And for 23 years, Bill Clinton, then George W. Bush, and then Obama broke the promise that had been made by Bill Clinton. It was so bad that every 6 months, the then president, whoever it was, had to tell the Israeli government, "Sorry, guys, we know we told you we're going to recognize Jerusalem and move the embassy, but we can't do it right now." So for 23 years, twice a year, so what does that mean? 46 times, America broke her promise to our brothers and sisters in Israel. Along comes my boss, along comes President Trump, and he says, I'm sorry, we're doing it, guys. And he convened a session of the National Security Council at the principals level, which means the actual cabinet members, not the guys who, the peons who run the NSC, but the actual cabinet members. And he assembled them in the Situation Room in the White House, and he said, "Okay, gentlemen, okay, Nikki, we are moving the embassy, and I am recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel." One man whose nickname was Mad Dog Mattis, which is a load of BS made up by him, who's this legend in the Marine Corps. He was such a coward. He was such a lap dog instead of a mad dog. Mattis actually said in front of everybody else, Mr. President, you can't do that. You're going to ignite World War III, and I don't have enough Marines to guard our embassies in the Middle East. Don't do it, sir. Don't do it. This absolute coward. What did my boss respond? He said, "Jim, we're going to do it for 3 reasons. Number 1, I promised the American people during the campaign. Number 2, we as a nation promised the nation of Israel 23 years ago. Oh, and by the way, Jim, number 3, it's the right thing to do." That's who Donald Trump is.
Yeah. In 2019, you were talking to him. I was listening to one of your interviews, and you made this comment, or you referred back to him, and you were talking to him as a boss. And it was probably in 17, but the interview was in 19. And he said something like, these things are going one way or the other, and all this persecution and things that were going on, and this and that. And you said something to him like, "Well, it's pretty bad. Could it get worse?" And he said, could it ever even get worse? There was this, I remember this tag that he said, could it even get worse? And that was 2019. And I'm just thinking, kind of wrap up this Trump section, that it has got worse. It's like, I think in 2019, he himself was thinking, man, like, this is the cesspool. It can't get any worse than this. But just briefly speak to the fact of how, so we're sitting here right now and we're saying, how could it even get any worse in 2023? When in 19, he said, how could it go? How do they keep inventing worseness? I mean, I don't understand how people can think this way. Just kind of give me an idea of, like, where is this political front going? Does it end when he wins, when we win in 2024? What's your quick thoughts on when he made that statement? Could it even get any worse?
Well, let's be clear. Donald J. Trump has to be destroyed by the establishment. He has to be destroyed. That's why he's facing 730 years in prison on 91 trumped up charges. Why do they have to destroy him? Because he's the only politician in America who isn't owned by special interests. Nobody owns Donald Trump. He's a self-made man. He's a billionaire. He's not owned by, defense industry interests, big oil, the unions, big pharma. Nobody owns him. And as a result, he is an existential threat to all the hucksters and grifters in this city where I'm, sitting. He must be stopped because he's the only man who can, clean out the swamp. And let me, explain to you why I reacted the way I reacted to you when you asked me that question on the plane. There's only, look, everybody knows I worked for him and that I support him and I'm going to vote for him. But there's a reason, there's only one reason that really matters why every American should vote for Donald Trump. Of the 330 million people in America, of all the people who are eligible, who are natural born citizens over the age of 35, there's only one human being right now, only one, who can only serve one term in office. And that's President Trump, because he's already been president once. The Constitution is clear. You can only be president for 2 terms total. Everyone else, whoever it is, whether it's, Nikki Haley, whether it's DeSantis, whether it's anybody else, they get to serve 2 terms if they can get reelected. So what does that mean? Well, very clearly, when they are standing there in front of Congress and they're raising their right hand and they've got their hand on the Bible, as soon as they are sworn in, what is going to be the number one priority for that individual if they're not Donald Trump? I'm just being very honest here. The number one priority, get reelected, which means you have to compromise, which means you have to play footsie under the table with the Democrats, with the deep state, with the DOJ that's targeting your voters. There's only one person who can't get reelected, and as a result, doesn't need to compromise. There's only one person who can burn down the corruption in this stinking cesspit called Washington, D.C., and that's Donald Trump. The idea that a DeSantis or a Haley are going to come in here and do what needs to be done. We have such a level of corruption. We have, look at January 6th, whatever you think about the Proud Boys and blah, blah, blah. The idea that 61-year-old grandmothers were put in prison, given custodial sentences for not hurting anybody, not stealing anything. The fact that somebody was given a prison sentence 2 days ago who wasn't even in Washington, D.C., that the head of the Proud Boys, who likewise was in Maryland, Maryland, during the January 6th riot, he got 22 years in prison. That's insanity. The idea
and
that
then the Palestinians are marching all through it, just having their way through it, and nothing happens. I mean, it's like,
well, we had what was it last week? Rashida Tlaib, screams about babies in Palestine, and what happens afterwards? Her protesters that she ginned up, what do? They take over Congress and the Speaker's office. And what happens to them? Does anybody get, tear gassed and rubber bulleted and then put in prison? Not one of them. So we have a DOJ, we have an FBI that is corrupt to the core. And I'm sorry, guys, there's only one person who can clean it out, and that's my former boss.
Yeah, and it's the authenticity, and it's this idea of being strong enough to face not only all of his sins, all of his demons, everything. And how many of you could literally undress in front of the world and just say, "Here I am, take it or leave it," and just show yourself? And this man has done it over and over and over again. In 2017, you did an interview with Hannity, and this is when you were working for Mr. Trump. And he asked you something about the media, and you said so eloquently. He said, Hannity, Sean, the media is 80% wrong. They are 180% turned around backwards on almost every reporting. And like, so when you take this whole Trump and you're kind of giving us the real side of Trump and this idea here, what do you remember? You probably don't remember that interview, but it was on Fox and it was a great interview. And you were right in the White House and you were in the throes of it, and you put Sean on his heels and you said, listen, 80% of everything the media is saying is wrong. It's 180 degrees backwards. Right. And so how does that play into our ability as a country to move forward? And then we'll just move on to the spiritual side, and we're going to wrap this show up, my good friend. Thank you.
They're all whores. They're all propaganda whores. I mean, look at CNN after what happened in Israel. I played the clip on my radio show. Erin Burnett, okay, this is like one of their superstars. An 85-year-old grandmother is held hostage underground by the thugs, the barbarians that are Hamas. And in some gesture of, whatever, attempting to placate Israel before they come down on them like the hammers of hell, they release this 85-year-old grandmother. Erin Burnett on CNN. I can't believe him. Nobody's going to believe this when they hear me say this, but if you don't believe me, I get it, fine. Go and watch the video. It's on my Twitter feed. I posted it last night. Watch what she says. Erin Burnett says, well, listen to that woman. They treated her so nicely. They even allowed her to wash her hair with shampoo. And you go, babies were slaughtered. Women were raped and then murdered at a concert. Houses were set on fire with families inside them. And you dare as a journalist talk about shampoo being given to a grandmother who, by the way, whose husband is still in captivity. These people are whores. They are on the side of evil. Then they don't even get to be called journalists. When I was in the White House, and I became an effective spokesperson for the travel moratorium from 7 nations that couldn't verify whether they were sending terrorists to America or not, then I became the target of the vile vituperation of the media, which I get. I mean, it comes with the territory. I represent the president, so they're gonna be aiming their flak at me. But when I have a quote unquote journalist write an attack piece on my 18-year-old son, high school age, in which the headline, they call my son a traitor, you realize these people are the enemies of civilization. They are truly political whores and propagandists. That's why what I said is so important. Whatever the mainstream lying legacy media says, you need to believe the opposite. Because it's whether they're talking to you about the border, it's secure. I guess 16 million illegals is their definition of secure. Whether it's Trump giving nuclear secrets to our enemies, they're all liars. They're all liars. This is just the propaganda wing of the Democrat Party and the deep state and the establishment. That's all you need to know. Now, God bless, the few exceptions out there. If you listen to my show, to Salem, if you read things like Breitbart, you watch my TV show on Newsmax, we give you the truth. But when you look at the panoply of media, 80% of it is crap. And in fact, it's worse than crap. It is the opposite of the truth.
Yeah. So I encourage you to tune into Sebastian Gorka. You're on at 3:00.
3 to 6 Eastern every day on 300 stations, but you can get it on podcasts. You can go to sebgorka.com where
millions of viewers. Let's take this show out. And I know this is interesting topic, and you have been at the forefront of this whole Palestinian and Israel situation. I think it affects all of us. Some of us, I mean, don't want to look at it, don't want to talk about it. It doesn't affect us, but I think it's going to affect us. I think it's already affected us. I don't think as Christians, as believers, we can turn our head to death and disparity and the uncontrollable rage of a situation over there that's been going on for thousands and thousands of years in some regard. We talked about on our show that if the world had a deed, the deed would belong to the Jewish culture and faith of people. Now we know that the Jewish people have strayed and then come back and strayed and come back and then finally went through the whole Rome thing, and Christ died on the cross. And it's just been going back and forth for a long time, Sebastian. And I'm looking to you as a modern day Apollos. And I find myself not perplexed in like which side to stand on. Obviously, Israel is the good side, the good God delivering side, the one that gave up the Gaza Strip in peace, that's always went over the olive branch, the periphery, all those things. They've done all the things that are supposed to be done. God has asked them to do, and this is the shit they get, right? They get bombed, they get babies taken, they got people paratrooping, they got people swimming underwater. They literally can't sleep in their house. They don't know who's knocking on the window. I guarantee you someone's sleeping over there with an armed weapon, if not all of them, waiting for the next situation to happen. Because of a situation of Palestinian rebels that are represented by Iran, and they all have this motive to do what they're going to do. And we are sitting back, watching, wondering how we're going to react. And I don't know, other than the visceral response I have right now to share with you, other than I need a little help here. And I know it's not your job to raise me, but there's a lot of people out here that need to understand that terrorism is terrorism, and evil is evil, and good is good. And we are good. We're trying to be good, and America needs to be better. But the situation is this, that it is tough. Caroline Glick, I think, was on your show a couple days ago, and she was phenomenal, man. And I heard some other interviews, and I heard, that, I didn't understand over there that we're not just dealing with the Hamas, and we're dealing with the Houthis. We're also dealing with the Hezbollah. The Hezbollah and the Hamas are the ones that are really kind of the ones that are bearing into us now. But I didn't realize that there's several other tribes, if you will, or terrorist organizations that are taking aim at us as well at the same time, and all the things that are going on there. And I know it's a big topic, but if you could put it in a capsule, help us out a little bit, Sebastian, and educate these viewers in the world in a little bit. I appreciate that.
Well, look, what you said is spot on. We have to recognize this is not about, a race of people 8,000 miles away. This is a civilizational conflict. The jihadis have a phrase: first we come for the Saturday people, then we come for the Sunday people. What do they mean? First we kill the Jews, and then we kill the Christians.
And they're Friday people.
And the Muslims are Friday people. And it horrifies me. A young kid at one of these events I spoke at recently stood up and did the Tucker Carlson isolationist thing. And I feel like vomiting. When I hear somebody who says they're a Christian, or somebody who says they're a conservative, say, this isn't our problem, we have enough problems at home. My response is, then you're not a conservative, and you're most definitely a Christian. The whole point of what our Savior did is he said, I am the fulfillment of the old law. Jesus Christ was a Jew, and he said, I fulfill the old law, but I open salvation to all men, to Gentiles and Jews. So there's nowhere in the Bible that says the love I must have for my fellow man ends at the border of the United States. If you say that, sorry, you're just not a Christian. And the idea that the only nation in the region that is multicultural, that gives rights to Arabs and Jews and atheists, the only nation that functions as a democracy, is not important to us, or we shouldn't help it. Let me make it, this goes for the war in Ukraine as well, to all these isolationists. Why do we have America today? How does America exist as an independent free nation? If you don't know the history of that, then you don't deserve to have an American passport. Hang on, somebody's just come in the front door.
I love it.
So how did a nation in which only 3% or less of the colonists fought the British, how did we win? I mean, think about it. Britain was literally the most powerful empire the world had ever seen. If you look at an old map of the world in the 1700s, and the color pink is the pink for the British Empire, it stretches, from Scotland to India, the biggest empire the world has ever seen. So how the heck does Washington, how the heck did the Founding Fathers win? I'll tell you how. Because other nations helped them. Without the French doing a naval blockade, without money from Spain and Holland for the Revolutionary War, there is no America. You today, Todd, would be a citizen of the UK. You would be part of the British Commonwealth if Spain, Holland, and France hadn't helped the revolutionaries of 1776. So the idea that screw them, that's not our problem. A, you're not a Christian. B, you're not a conservative. And C, you don't understand how America was created with the assistance of those elsewhere. I'm not talking about deploying the 82nd Airborne to Jerusalem. I'm talking about helping the Israelis fight their own war. So yeah, this is when. How can a conservative say when children are being massacred, it's not our problem? It makes me sick. It makes me sick, Todd.
Yeah, so we're going to do the best we can in that, and I think that our support for Sebastian, Donald Trump, the conservative Republican movement in the way we see it. I mean, obviously there's fractions and even the Republican Party, but I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that. And the thing that just hit me, and I think that we can close with this, is something you said about I would be part of Great Britain. Right. And I think that listeners and people out there need to understand that there was a Babylon, right? There was an Egypt, right? There was a Rome, right? There was an empire of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, right? There was all these things. And if we sit here and we just think about ourselves and we think that nothing's going to change, and we have all these collegiate people protesting and thinking that all they have to do is play computers and do little things and not participate in the political system, not participate in jobs, not participate, like we're getting too soft, right? We don't understand the fact that this stuff can't end. It's not like it can't end. It probably will end. And we're a part of watching this happen right now in our country. So I'm going to let Sebastian close, and I want to take it out. I'm going to say goodbye to him so he can get on with his day. He's got a big show to do. Sebastian, you're very compelling. You're very authentic. I want to thank you for everything you've done for this country. I want to give you the final word here, and then I'm going to sign off with my followers this morning. Lots of viewers. Thank you so much. Hundreds of comments. I'm just grateful for this. Give us the sign off, Sebastian Gorka. Thank you very much.
If you're a Christian, when you wake up in the morning after you say your prayers, you ask yourself, what are you going to do for God to glorify him today? When you go to bed and you say your prayers, we Catholics call it an examination of conscience, and you ask yourself, did I do what I was supposed to do for the glory of God today? I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. For the next 13 months, get engaged politically. When you wake up in the morning, ask yourself, what are you going to do for God? And ask yourself, what am I going to do to save America? And at the end of the day, ask yourself, did I do those things? Because if you think you're going to save America by voting or writing a check for a candidate, I suggest you move elsewhere, because we are on the precipice. If they lower the voting age to 16, if they pack the Supreme Court, it's done. It's over. If they amnesty 18 million illegals, you will never get to choose a government again in America. So if you're not running for office, and I mean anything, I don't care if it's the local library board, if you're not running for local office and you aren't politically engaged, you are actively helping those who wish to destroy America. So get busy. We can save America. We've been in worse situations, but this is crunch time. So everybody get engaged like this man, Todd. Get engaged, become that wired differently person.
Thank you, Sebastian Gorka. Thank you for getting up this morning. I want you to understand, this is eminent. This is not something we're just going to talk about today. I want you to forget about and go to work. And I want this to stick with you. I want you to understand a man like this has given his entire life. We're trying to do things to grow this country, grow this world in a Christian nature. I want to grow you personally, spiritually, and profitably. And Sebastian Gorka is on the same track in his way. And I just want to thank you. This is not something that's just going to go away. This world has been here for us, right? And we are here to bring heaven on earth, right? Our job is to spread that here on earth, right? Pieces of us, and we're supposed to emulate that and matriculate it out over the country. So here's what I want you to understand. Great Britain was not that far ago. You can say, well, Rome was a long time ago. You can say, well, Egypt, I don't even know what a Babylon is. But the point of the matter is those points, those times, those were not that far ago. Those were just yesterday. God bless you guys. This can possibly end. You need to move with expedience. Be authentic in life. God bless you all. God bless you all. Thank you, Sebastian. You're a warrior. And I'll see you November 13th.